I'm Katie Schuhow, CPA, Audit Partner at a public accounting firm, RSM.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the No Worry at Work podcast, where we talk about work, the experience of it, and an effort to find more meaning within it with guests that have had success in that and who can hopefully teach us something during the course of the interview. At this point in time, most standard metrics say that Americans are working 90,000 hours in their lives and spending the better part of 30 or 40 years of their lives with their primary focus on work. Most studies also say that they're not happy, and quite frankly that Americans are less happy than most of the more advanced economies in terms of their work and lives. So here we're trying to address that and talk to people who have had success. Our guest today is Katie Schuhow. She's a partner at RSM US LLP. And thank you for coming here today, Katie.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
The first thing I want to talk a little bit with you about, Katie, is just your job so that people have a better sense of what you do and what the company does, please.
Sure. So, like you said, Patrick, I'm a partner at RSM US LLP. I've been with the firm for 16 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so since college. RSM is a public accounting firm, but we're the largest provider of audit, tax, and consulting services to the middle market. So relative to the big four accounting firms, we're the fifth largest. Okay,
How many people does that mean?
Yeah, so in the U.S. and Canada, we're 14,000 people.
Okay.
Across 90 locations.
Okay,
yeah.
All right.
But we're part of a global network in 123 countries, and that's 50,000 people.
Okay.
And we continue to grow and see a lot of good success focusing on the middle market.
Wow. And so in that entity, I imagine there's a ton of different jobs and things that people do. And I imagine in 16 years, there's a ton of different things that you've done. If you were to simplify it, just for the audience, what is it you're doing for the most part in your day?
Right.
And I mean, sort of now, if you will.
Yeah. So we organize ourselves by industry. We bring our people up to be industry specialists. So we focus on 14 industries. My industry specialty is financial services.
Okay.
And within financial services, we focus on asset management, capital markets, financial institutions, banks, specialty finance, and insurance. So the largest of those being asset management has its own subsectors like hedge funds, private equity funds. My focus is private equity funds.
Okay.
So very specifically, I do the financial statement audits of private equity funds, and I've been doing that for 16 years.
Now, private equity is talked about often in scholarly articles in academia as being one of the unique things in this country's economy that sets it off from other economies. If you were to simplify what private equity does, just for people listening.
Sure. Yeah, private equity is interesting. You can be a private equity manager performing buyout transactions, owning companies. You can be a private equity manager investing in smaller companies, startup companies like venture capital.
Yeah.
You can be a private equity manager focused on the credit space, providing debt financing to companies who can't otherwise obtain that financing from traditional financial institutions like banks. Private equity is fascinating because of the way in which they support particularly our middle market in the U.S. and abroad, and our lower middle market. So they provide a lot of jobs, they grow businesses, they acquire other small businesses and make middle market companies more successful.
In some ways, they're kind of an economic incubator for
Huge.
startups and for businesses growing or achieving, or new products even coming to market. Right?
And they're accountable to their investors.
Right.
The way in which they're able to provide this capital to middle market and lower middle market businesses is by accumulating capital from private investors. And those private investors could be high net worth individuals. They could be institutional limited partners such as pension plans or insurance companies. And so that accumulation of capital is what allows these private funds to invest that capital in these companies domestically for the most part, but also abroad.
Fascinating area of space to be in. And the fascinating thing about you and talking to you while you're in it is that you're a woman in such a position of leadership, because financial services is not traditionally a space for women, nor is accounting traditionally a space for women. Just as a primer for our conversation, I went back and I looked at the statistics, and in 1973, women were making 56 cents for every dollar that men were making, and while we've gotten a lot better, they're still only making 83 cents per dollar. Women have a hard time getting the salaries they deserve and objectively should get. And I guess I would be interested in how you found your experience as a woman in this field, and indeed maybe whether you think women are poignantly aware of this disparity, and whether you were aware of it as you went through your ascension to becoming a partner.
Luckily, I think I was just naively oblivious to this fact. And, in professional services, I think there isn't so much of that disparity in my own experience. And I've worked in New York, I've worked in Chicago, I've worked in San Francisco, I've worked in Connecticut, and I have not come across that disparity. However, if you look at accounting majors today who are entering the workforce, it is out of balance. You have 60% of males coming into the workforce as accounting majors, and only 40% females. And then that imbalance continues to be more out of balance as you move up in the ranks in the accounting profession.
Meaning that there's more attrition of the women in the field as opposed to men.
There is, yeah. And, my own personal opinion on that is everyone loses when women come out of the workforce. And that's not to say women are coming out of the workforce when they're leaving public accounting, because they very well could be going into private. They'll go to work for a company, a client of the public accounting firm, or someone in some company in that industry. But it is discouraging to know that females may have the perception that they can't make enough money to support themselves and cover childcare. Having kids in daycare is a huge cost. And to be able to make enough money to cover those costs, boy, that's tough. You really have to be in it for the long game. And so it pains me to hear that stat, but if women can continue to support women, and if we can find allies in our male counterparts, which I fortunately have had several male allies in my company, then the tides will, I think, continue to change.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other part of that is it's not just a dollar for dollar exchange, right? It's not just can I make as much as I make to pay for the daycare or offset it, but also that means that I'm not with my children, right? So there's a non-dollar element to the equation and the calculation, which I think can be frustrating, and certainly for our women clients that we worked with over time. We hear that often when we talk to them. I wanted to change the script a little bit and go back to what got you to this position. I think a lot of times when people hear partner at a big fancy accounting firm, they presume that you came out of the womb with a calculator and a spreadsheet and started doing those things right away. And that's not at all where you came from. So if you could tell us just a little bit about your background and what got you here.
Yeah, so, I'm from Iowa. To begin with. I was born and raised in eastern Iowa. My father spent 34 years at John Deere. My mother was a dental hygienist. So while my father was helping to build tractors and my mother was chipping and grinding, as she referred to it, I was going through school just like any other, blue-collar Midwestern girl. Had the opportunity to go to the University of Iowa, really didn't know what I was getting into, but I knew that watching my dad and the way he got dressed going to work, and watching my mother and the way she got dressed going to work, I knew I wanted to be fancier. I wanted to be able to put on some high heels, wear a suit jacket.
So ambition born out by a fashion desire.
It was. That sounds so vain, and I don't think I am. But so when you go to the University of Iowa and you have this chance to enter the College of Business without a degree declared, a major declared, which you didn't have to, that was really intriguing to me. And so once you took, all the different introductory classes in the College of Business, I fell in love with accounting. And that wasn't surprising because even as a fifth grader, I loved math.
Okay.
I would go up to my teacher after class and I would ask for even harder math problems than we went through in school. Yeah, I just loved it. I ate it up.
So there was something out of the box about that.
Oh, yes.
That affinity for numbers.
Yes.
What do they call it? Numerosity, not fluency in numerals. Is
Yes.
Sort of
yeah.
Okay.
It was natural to me.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to talk a little bit about how you moved through college and then sort of got to the workplace. Any particular mentors or experiences that resonate with you? Because I know finishing the college experience in accounting is a step, but there's a long road between that and being a partner in a firm like you are now.
Yeah. For me, I felt that I was grounded in really the support by my father. He always told me, you can go to any college you want, Katie. You can be anything you want to be. You can do and go wherever you want to. So I always, I think, felt empowered where, the world was sort of my oyster. I had never really seen any family members go too far outside of the Midwest with their career. So, like the thought of maybe working in some fancy business building in Kansas City, Missouri, that sounded pretty spectacular to me.
Right.
Just so happened I fell in love in college, and my boyfriend, then fiance, now husband, he had much bigger aspirations. He was a finance major. I think he really liked the idea of Wall Street and the finance engine on Wall Street in Manhattan. And so he actually opened my eyes up to these opportunities, more broadly. And so I heard you could get a pretty nice starting salary at a public accounting firm with an accounting major. So I did everything I could, to go to those career fairs, get those interviews, and start out in public accounting because I felt like I would have job security. I wanted job security. And here I had this accounting major that could give me this job security at this big, fancy, nice firm. I was all in.
And the thing that's interesting to me, and I just learned this this morning, is that when I think of somebody pursuing accounting, I think of somebody dedicated, rigorous, organized, perhaps in a box.
Yeah.
And you told me at the time you were skydiving. And what was the other thing?
Bungee jumping and sky coasting.
Sky coasting, that was the other thing. Can you sort of walk me through what got you in the position and what defines that interesting unity of character where you're studying, you're compartmentalizing, you're organizing things, and you're saying, and let's jump out of a plane.
No kidding, right? I think I was a little bit of an adrenaline junkie. I loved roller coaster rides, and I loved the idea of bungee jumping, and so I got to do that, and I loved the idea of jumping out of an airplane, and so I got to do that. That was my 18th birthday from my mother, my 18th birthday present from my mother.
Who, by the way, you say insisted that she jump with you?
With me,
because
yes.
It was, if
there was no way.
If we're going, we're
going together.
It's a great Midwestern blend on the skydiving.
And I'll tell you, my 12-year-old daughter has already told me she wants to jump out of an airplane. So I'm going, okay, then I'm going with you.
Wow, okay. You got to get a family membership.
Right, seriously.
Okay. But I mean, did that sort of energy or love for risk somehow play along with the love for organization? Like, how does that play out
it's really
in your
interesting.
mind or character? Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, because I've always been a neatnik too, and I always have had a love for organization. I was the only girl in my group of girlfriends growing up that My room was always spotless. My
Right.
car was always spotless.
Yeah.
And so I always did feel a little bit different in that way. But the thing about accounting majors, and most people would be surprised, is we are cut from many different cloths. We had a colleague in our Chicago office that was so passionate about pursuing a career in music that we worked out a flexible arrangement with him to allow him to move to Nashville, work a reduced schedule, and still be working for the Chicago office and on those Chicago clients remotely from Nashville.
Wow. Okay.
Now, that music career didn't pan out exactly like how he expected.
That happens sometimes.
Yeah,
with music, right?
right. And so he ended up transferring back to the Chicago area and
Right.
working full-time in the Chicago office. But that's just one example of the sort of maybe colorful characters, if you will, that can absolutely have a career in accounting.
Yeah.
Particularly in the audit line of business and in the consulting line of business, those lines of business tend to attract the more outgoing, type A, extrovert type personalities.
Right.
And so it's actually less surprising than you think that I'm an accountant and I've jumped out of an airplane.
Okay. I'm going to think differently about accountants from heretofore by virtue of this. So I want to talk a little bit now about the process you've had at RSM. You were working there as a woman. Obviously, there's a ton of jobs that don't lead to partnership positions, right? And so how did the opportunity present itself, and how did you decide that you wanted in and plug into that process?
Yeah.
And particularly just orienting that towards the challenges we've already talked about as a woman getting into that role.
Sure. And off of the bat, I didn't have my end goal, I'm going to be a partner in this firm. That was not a thought. We're a pretty hierarchical profession. Okay, you enter the firm as an associate, you get promoted to a senior associate, then you become a supervisor, then a manager, then a senior manager, the director, and then a partner.
Okay.
So when I first started out, I thought, boy, it'd be really cool if I could become a manager. That title sounds really great, and I definitely want to stay here until I'm a manager. And by the time I became a manager, I thought, wow, I think I've got this figured out. And I really like it here. The culture is great. I felt supported. I had done 2 maternity leaves with the firm by the time I was a manager.
Okay.
I was supported the whole way through.
Just for context, for how long?
3 months.
3 months each.
3 months each.
Okay.
And from the time I returned from my first maternity leave, I had been working an 80% reduced schedule.
Okay. And what does that mean, just to simplify it for us to understand?
Yeah. We have charge hour goals. We enter our time daily.
Okay.
That's the kind of client service, that we do. And so each client server has a charge hour goal for the year.
All right.
And so if you're wanting to work a reduced flex schedule, then your charge hour goal simply gets reduced accordingly, and so does your salary.
Okay.
And for the most part, your benefits stay intact as is at sort of 100%.
Right.
And so here I had this firm, allowing me to be flexible in this way with the maternity leaves, with the reduced work schedule. And by then, my technical skills, my technical acumen, and my ability to serve my clients and feel like a real, we call it a first choice advisor to my private equity funds, that started to be really fulfilling. And so I thought, wow, I think I can stick around and make it to even the next level. Right. And by then, I had coaches and mentors who were willing to peel back the curtain and show me what it meant to be more strategic as a client server, more strategic as a client or as a colleague and a coach to team members. And, the other aspects of running a business and being part of a large firm like RSM, like billing, collecting, recruitment, retention, office culture, all those sort of things started to come to the forefront. And I started to really like the idea that I could be a technical expert with my clients and I could do all these other things. I worked on an 80% schedule for 10 years. Ended up getting promoted to senior manager while I was on my third maternity leave.
So the promotion actually happened while you were
While I was on my third maternity leave.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Continued on with my 80% schedule.
I'm sorry, I just want to drill down on this. How did the 80-20 schedule manifest? Was it certain days of the week that you were working or not?
Yeah,
okay.
It was.
And so walk us through what that looked like and how you drew those lines.
Right. And it didn't have to be a cookie cutter schedule. Mm-hmm. It was up to me to present what I wanted, and how I would work it and how I would overcome the challenges of, say, being offline for a day during the week when I'm still trying to serve my clients or manage a team.
Right.
So the way I requested it, the way I designed it, was to work 4 days a week for 9 months out of the year, and 5 days a week for the 3 months out of the year. That's our peak season, our busy season, where everyone else is ramping up to 6 days a week.
Okay.
And I would typically take Fridays off because that tended to be a lighter day when it came to managing teams and corresponding with clients. So I arranged it that way for 9 out of the 10 years. For 1 year, when my oldest started kindergarten, I wanted to be there to get her on the bus and get her off of the bus. Right. So I shifted and worked 5 days a week, but only 9 to 3.
Okay.
That did not work well for me. I did not like to end my workday seemingly in the middle of the day, is what it felt like.
Because the symphony was unfinished, if you will.
Exactly. Yeah, I had so many balls in the air, or, momentum for the day, and then I would just have to drop everything and get to the bus. So that only lasted for 1 year, and that was the beauty of matching the business need of the firm and my preference. We were able to pivot back to the schedule that worked best for me, but also probably worked best for the business, which was to be available for 4 full days, those 9 months out of the year, and 5 full days, those 3 months out of the year. And
so let me just ask a question, because the thing that invites concern, I think, as an outsider is private equity is fast moving.
Yeah.
Okay. High intensity.
Yep.
Right. And unpredictable. Right.
Yes.
Startup trajectories are not on autopilot. They are volatile.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
So what happened if something went wrong on a Friday morning?
Right.
And Katie is on her day that she's not working.
Right.
How did you build in for that contingency?
I'd say that's the beauty of audit and public accounting. When you're doing financial statement audits, that schedule and the need of you to be all hands on deck with your clients is predictable. Okay. And the other beauty about audits is no audit gets done by one person.
Okay.
The audit is accomplished by the contributions and dedication of every single team member. I mentioned we're hierarchical. Yeah. So it's the associate and that supervisor and that manager and that partner. Yeah. So if Katie's not available on Friday, somebody else is. And I would say that is the beauty of a firm who supports flexibility and reduced schedules, is they're willing to pick up where the ball might be dropped by the other team member, and vice versa. You know, everyone was willing to help out if somebody was out, say, on vacation. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't the only one who was off work on a Friday, particularly in the summer. Right. So it just, but I always had such care and dedication to my people and my clients, and I was always visible where I could be, that my 80% schedule, I don't think held me back, except for the fact that you could argue, for 10 years, maybe I worked a total of 8 years.
Right.
So, as far as like pace of moving up that ladder. That could have been slowed a bit, but when you talk about working 90,000 hours and 30 to 40 years out of your life, what is 2 years?
Right.
I mean, really?
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah. And by the way, that 2 years of not working is being exchanged for 2 years with your family,
Exactly.
with your kids,
Exactly.
in formative times.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a trade that I think almost everybody.
And allowing my husband's career to be in the driver's seat,
Sure.
which I was really supportive of. He was hungry, he was successful, he was good at what he was doing, and that was really neat to see him thrive and grow in his career.
Yeah.
So it worked out for us as a family. It was a choice that we as a family made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of want to turn a little bit, because I think I have a good understanding of that structure, at least some of it. I kind of want to turn to your thoughts on the remote work experience. And obviously this is a manifestation of our economy now after COVID, right? But I do think it's an important component perhaps to that 80-20 life or something, right? It becomes more accomplishable if you're capable of working from home, because then when your day is over, you can go see your kids and see your family and have dinner or whatever. How has that worked out, and what are the challenges and upsides and downsides to integrating that into your leadership role now?
Yeah. It is a topic of discussion weekly.
Yeah.
So it is still evolving.
Yeah.
I don't know that any one firm has come up with the perfect mix of mandating in-person work versus allowing for remote work. I'll tell you what we're doing as a firm, and then I'll let you know my own personal opinion. As a firm, we're allowing for a hybrid, flexible work schedule where it's up to each individual person along with their team members and their clients to figure out what works best. So I'll give you an example. We have a team member who came up with a structure for their team. Team members were located out of 2 offices, Stamford and Hartford. So they said, okay, team, Tuesdays, we're going to work from Stamford together. Wednesdays, we're going to work at the client site. Thursdays, we're going to work from Hartford together. And everyone agreed to that and agreed to communicate if any exceptions were needed. Like they couldn't make it in on Thursday for whatever reason. And so that worked for them individually, for their team, and for the client. Right. It was coordinated with the client, to be there every Wednesday. So it's very team by team based. However, you do have a good amount of the workforce who have taken upon themselves to interpret hybrid as, well, I can just work wherever I want.
Optional.
I'm most comfortable and most productive, maybe they think, working from home all the time.
Yeah.
But when you are a client server working in a team in an apprenticeship model, which we still largely are, and you're learning and you're teaching, what we've learned, I think, the hard way over the past 3 years is learning and teaching behind a computer screen in, whatever location you choose, not the office, is just less effective.
Yeah.
It is less effective. They, for the most part, are behind on their performance.
Yeah.
They're not as technically sound as they should be after 1, 2, 3 years in the profession. Now, the students entering the profession now, after having had that college experience sort of taken away from them, they're more excited to be in the office. They want to be around people. They feel like they got gypped in the pandemic.
Right.
And when they're coming in and they're learning by osmosis because of the conversation taking place next to them, or they're able to jump into that manager or partner's office for that team meeting, their performance is excelling.
Yeah.
So to me, if you're a company saying we're offering a hybrid work environment, that hybrid work environment means both.
Yeah.
It means you'll be working from the office, you'll be working from the client, you'll be working for the team. You figure it out what works best for you. But it is both. Now, what I think we've learned the hard way is it's up to the leaders, and the leaders can be the partners, the managers, anyone with influence is a leader, to provide those guardrails and provide that structure and not leave it up to chance.
Yeah.
Because when you leave it up to chance, it's too easy for people to opt out.
Yeah.
So that's my own personal opinion.
And so if I could break that out, it sounds like what you're saying is on the training side in particular, that is with the more junior level people learning, that training is a lot more effective in person, right?
Totally.
But on the other hand, the flexibility of hybrid work has some great opportunities created, including being able to incorporate people who maybe couldn't have worked as readily, like women with families and such.
Exactly.
And other people who, for whatever family or other reason, couldn't always be in the office for FaceTime. They can still continue to participate.
Exactly.
I guess that makes sense. It's just unfortunately, it's not an easy answer. The answer is, it depends, right?
It depends, I know. And I think we're still figuring it out. And I think the world of academia continues to study this. And I think we're seeing it play out in corporate America in real time. And so I think it'll be an evolving situation that will be a topic of conversation, I think, for years to come.
Yeah. One of the fascinating things, and you mentioned this, one of our previous guests, the CEO, he said, the problem is that the people he talks to, and he's now a chief strategy officer, some of the leaders and people who have been around in business for a long time don't like to talk about remote work, and they say that they think it's an aberration, which I think is what Goldman Sachs said, or the like. And ultimately, the statistics are showing that remote workers are working more frequently than the ones who came into the office, right? But he said, but there's still a problem because they work more. And ultimately, they're not happier.
Exactly.
Because the phone is available to them, or the work is available to them from the time they wake up at home to the time they go to sleep at night. They feel less free. And some of them even want to be working from home and are less free at the same time. So they're not quite, the statistics are not lining up. They say they want to be home. That results in them working more, but that results in them unhappier.
Exactly.
And he thinks that's going to be one of the big controversies we have coming up.
I completely agree. I felt that myself. So I was one of those, going a little rogue during the pandemic, going, okay, office managing partner, can I please come into the office like at least one day a week? I'm dying here. I've got to get out of the house. Right. Because it's so difficult to provide definition to your day.
Yes.
There's no real start to the day or real end to the day unless you intentionally set up a schedule or habits to help you ease into the work and ease out of the work at the end of the day, like the commute or the walk or the train ride.
Well, that train ride can be tremendous, or that commute can be tremendous.
Huge
time to come back,
decompress.
And I think one of the other challenges, which I've heard people talk about before, is at work it's hard to multitask. At home, when you're multitasking, and part of that multitasking might be spending time with your son or daughter or working, it's all the more frustrating. I mean, at work you can say, geez, okay, I can put this client matter to the side and focus on that one. But it's hard to ever look at your son or daughter or parent, whoever you're caring for, and say, I'm going to multitask by deciding Johnny isn't getting his lunch right now because I'm going to work on this client, right? You feel horrible about making that decision, which makes the struggle and the establishing the guardrails for yourself at home a challenge that I think we're still working through.
It's so true.
So I think just like a lot of really successful people, you've had the experience of both leading and being led, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that, your experiences. I'd like to start, if you don't mind, with a narrative that you shared with us just a couple of minutes ago about being part of the mission and a story that you thought resonated with you. So maybe you could start with that.
Yeah, sure. So, to be successful at work, I think you absolutely have to have, your own internal drive. But you do need coaches, mentors, peers that surround you almost like a personal board of directors to help you along the way. And for me, in my experience, I was a high performer, okay, in most respects. And I would get accolades here and there, good job on this, great job on that. But the first time that really resonated with me was later on in my career, before I made partner. And I had a new partner say to me that he thought I would be good in a national leader role for one of our employee network groups. And when he gave me that vote of confidence and articulated why he felt that I would be good as a leader nationally for a group internally, that hit me. It was like a light bulb went off. It was as if that imposter phenomenon that many of us females experience was almost squashed. And I call it a first believer. Someone who first believed in my potential. First really saw my potential and believed that I could be influential in our organization more broadly, way more than I ever dreamed of. And
what was that subset that he wanted you to lead nationally?
Yeah. So our diversity and inclusion platform at our firm is called CDI, Culture, Diversity, and Inclusion. And on that platform, we have 12 employee network groups.
Okay.
So these are employee network groups. We have Valor for veterans and allies of veterans. We have Pride, which is for our LGBTQ plus community and allies of that. Our STAR group is for our female professionals. We also have a Family First group, which is there to support working caregivers. And that was the group that he thought I would be a great national leader for. Yeah. And that really, it sort of hit me like a ton of bricks, like, oh my gosh, you really think I would be good at something like that? Females are much more inclined to perfect a skill set before they raise their hand for a promotion or a stretch assignment. Okay. Whereas what we see, males are more inclined to raise their hand for that promotion or that stretch assignment, sort of regardless. There's maybe just more confidence, more natural confidence. And like I said, females tend to suffer from this imposter phenomenon a little bit more, where they just don't think they're good enough for something. They think they're perceived as being less capable, when actually the perception is very positive. The perception is that they're very capable, and there's a lot of potential seen in them. And so that first believer experience sort of squashed that imposter phenomenon for me, and I became this national leader of our Family First Employee Network group at the firm.
Before being partner, which gives you this opportunity to lead. Yes. Even as you're ascending, if you will.
Yes, and be visible.
Yeah.
Be visible and be innovative with programming and communication, and how we supported our working caregivers through educational events, and even working with our human resource function, talking to them about the benefits we provide, what we're hearing from the workforce about what benefits we could be providing, what people are asking about. So a good example would be breast milk delivery service. Have you ever even heard of such a thing?
I have not. No.
Yeah. So for working females who are traveling for work, if they're still breastfeeding for their child, the biggest pain point for them is to have to travel. They have to pump to keep their supply up, and then they have to throw that out. And so it's a waste of that breast milk that, we're sort of told now, educated now on how awesome that breast milk is, so to be able to travel and have a delivery service. So for example, Milk Stork is an example of one of these delivery services. They'll pick that breast milk up from your hotel, and then store it in a refrigerated container and get it back to home for you. Yep. So it doesn't go to waste. And that's a benefit that we as a firm could easily provide, and we got that in place.
Wow.
For our working
That's
caregivers.
amazing. Though.
I know.
That's wow.
And it came from just people talking about it and saying, hey, Katie, do we have this? National Leader of Family First, you should know if we have this, right? And you should know if we don't have it, why don't we have it? And it was like, I have no idea why we don't have that. It's a great, great idea. And we were able to work with human resources to get that in place.
Wow, that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
One of the things that you mentioned to me when you told this first believer narrative was not just that the belief was there, but that the skills that this first believer shared with you weren't necessarily even the ones that you thought were your best. In other words, you were thinking you were great at blocking and tackling, and he said, yeah, but your punting is great, and my God, you've got a great arm for the long throws. I don't know why I'm using the football analogy.
I love it.
but so be it. My question is this: how have you integrated that experience into your leadership now?
Yeah. Well, when you become the national leader of a group within a 14,000 person firm, it sort of takes the blinders off.
Yeah.
So you start to realize, boy, there's a real engine that's needed to come up with the programming, the values, the culture, and there is a lot of thought and time and effort that goes on behind the scenes to get it right for our people and to get it right for our clients. Yeah. We don't do anything flippantly. And so it gave me an appreciation for the culture carriers and the innovative people who are coming up with how we run our business for our clients, our colleagues, and our communities too. It's no small task, and yet it's so fulfilling personally to be a part of that engine, if you will, because you're fulfilled with learning about the experience, being a part of something bigger, and then seeing how it affects our people in such a positive way. Another example is we give out a Working Mom and a Working Dad of the Year award every year within RSM. Okay. And so you're nominated, a bunch of nominations come in. So Patrick Boyd, you'll have like 12 nominations come in to be the Working Dad of the Year. Yeah, I hope. So that you'd blow out the competition and you'd be selected as the Working Dad of the Year. Well, we partner with Working Mother Media, who puts on a 3-day educational conference and gala in the middle of Times Square in New York City. And we do a table of 10 for this event every year. And so your current and prior Working Moms and Dads of the Year and the National Leader of Family First gets to go and celebrate your Working Mom and Dad of the Year. And it's this beautiful event that everyone's dressed up so beautifully for, beautiful dinner, beautiful dresses. It's a gala, in Manhattan. So that's just an example to see how cool that experience is for our working mom is from Des Moines, Iowa. Okay. So for her to be able to come out to Manhattan with her partner and experience this, that's just so fulfilling. So that's how I think the blinders come off, and you end up feeling even more of a sense of joy at work.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So now I want you to put away your narrative and take out your crystal ball. Things are changing a lot, and this has been a change in a century in terms of the way the workplace has been different and impacted differently with people remote and people still scared to come into work and people unclear as to what their roles are in companies. Yeah. And maybe most revelatory, I think, to some leaders in industry, the eagerness, if you will, of workers to resign with the Great Resignation. Yeah. What are leaders missing? Yeah. And what do you predict for the next couple of years?
Not only has there been the Great Resignation, but there's also now this concept of quiet quitting.
Sure. Right.
And quiet firing.
Yep.
So these are these concepts of, quiet quitting is people are still working, but they're just doing the they're doing what
They don't see an opportunity for long-term success. They're not being respected, and they're just enduring,
yes.
if you will, at best.
Yes,
right?
Just the sort of bare minimum of what the exact job description entailed.
Right.
Nothing, there's no going above and beyond. There's no, motivation to be visible. So that's playing out. And then there's the quiet firing where they're not being let go. They're not getting constructive feedback. They're just not getting scheduled.
Right.
They're just not getting the hours that they once used to get.
Right.
So then they're feeling undervalued. So I think those are playing out, particularly in a remote workforce. We've concentrated in the past, I think, on flexibility. And I think where we might be moving to is this idea of schedule control. You don't want flexibility, you want schedule control. You want to be able to say, I'm going to work 9 to 4 on Mondays. Tuesdays, I can work 8 to 6. Wednesdays, I can be at the client. Thursdays, I can be at home. And you want to be able to control exactly the design of where you work and how long. So I think employers have to embrace the idea of schedule control versus flexibility, and be able to articulate it in a way that says, look, we want to match our business needs with your preferences.
Yeah.
So let's come up with a controlled schedule that marries both of those, and also let's be fluid where we can reevaluate every 6 months or every 12 months. That's where I see us going.
Okay. And it seems to me also, and you touched on this, so I just want to make sure I don't miss it, that believing that there's a mission associated with your work is another way to keep people involved.
Yeah.
Just
Yes.
I'd like you to share that concept and its application a little bit with us.
Yeah, I mean, the premise here is the joy at work, right? And I think a big piece of experiencing joy at work is feeling connected to a higher purpose,
Right.
And having that be innately fulfilling to you.
Yeah.
So there's a story, and some people might say it's a myth, but the story goes that in 1962, JFK was at NASA, and he was walking the halls of NASA, and he came upon a man with a broom, presumably the janitor. And he said, well, hello there, I'm Jack Kennedy, and what are you doing here? And the man with the broom, the janitor, he said, well, hello, Mr. President, I'm helping put a man on a moon.
Right.
So somewhere within that organization, the way that culture worked was that janitor felt connected to the ultimate mission of the entirety of NASA. So for me, here, I'm an auditor for a public accounting firm.
Not putting the man on the moon.
Not putting a man on the moon,
set of goals,
right. But I very much feel connected to the higher purpose of providing assurance to our capital markets in this democratic society.
Right.
And that gives me such fulfillment. I feel like I'm playing an integral role in our society.
Yeah.
And that brings me joy. I think there's, more ingredients to that recipe, but that stands out to me as the biggest.
It seems to me that can be an important component in making people enjoy their jobs, staying with their jobs. I mean, one of the things that I think you've talked about and seems to be an important component to your industry is continuity in work. The average worker doesn't usually stay at a job that long.
Yeah.
With you have far more long-term employees participating, which is better for the client relationship.
Yeah,
and I think that's great, but I think it's hard to come by unless you establish that mission, if you will.
Exactly.
Which is it's a great story and a great narrative.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
So I like to ask this question of people, and I'm going to ask it of you. What have I not asked that you want to share?
Well, if we were talking about success, I'd say, well, what's the recipe to success, right? And I would talk about courage, and I would talk about visibility, and maybe above all, curiosity, almost an innate sense of being curious. But if we're talking about the joy at work and what's the recipe for finding joy at work, I would say it's that connection to a higher purpose and being innately fulfilled in that way. But I would also say a positive attitude. Boy, that has gotten me through some really stressful times.
Right.
There's the power of positive thinking.
Yeah.
Power of positive leadership. Okay, I really buy into that. I really think that's powerful. There's also care. Just having a genuine care for your colleagues and the people that you work with, even in a profession like ours where we've got such a hierarchical organization structure. If I can relay to my colleagues that I feel you, like I'm a partner and you're a second-year associate, but I'm right here with you. I'm your team member and we're going to accomplish this project together. That genuine care for your colleagues and your clients, I think that really goes a long way. And so thirdly, having that recognition for your contributions. You do have to feel appreciated. You do have to feel like those good deeds or those, stellar phone calls or that amazing meeting agenda you put together or PowerPoint presentation or how you executed on the project as a whole. You have to feel rewarded. You have to feel seen. So if you're doing all the right things and you're exceeding expectations, but nobody says anything about it, nobody recognizes it or articulates it, that's not going to go over well, because that person's talent and contributions is going to get articulated, verbalized, and recognized elsewhere. It's the recognition, the genuine care, and the positive attitude. Recipe for joy.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things you mentioned, which I thought is useful, is the importance of ceremony and recognition. This, what was it, Working Mothers and Fathers celebration. Sometimes just celebrating what you've done or what you could do, those kind of things are important. Otherwise, the monotony of any type of work can get to be defeating, perhaps, or at least uninspiring. Right. Okay, so you're on a deserted island. Okay. You can have one person, not a family member.
Okay.
You can have one meal.
Okay.
You get gruel and water, but then one special meal.
Okay.
Right. And one type of music.
Okay. So
where does our skydiving executive take us with these?
It comes to food, like the practical side of me would say eggs, because maybe I could figure out how to get a chicken out of that, and then I could have chicken and eggs.
Okay, so this sounds like an accountant's analysis. Okay,
and eggs are so versatile. Hard boiled and fried and etc.
Sure.
But what really I would like to go there with is coffee and chocolate. Those are two things that bring me joy on a daily basis.
There we go. All right. Coffee, chocolate, and maybe a side of eggs.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Boy, when you talk about music, I mean, I love anything from Ray Charles to Alan Jackson to the Beatles and Elvis and Pink and Alanis Morissette.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, if I had to choose one, it would be Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton?
It would be Dolly Parton. Yeah, she
Very
is extraordinarily genuine.
Yeah.
She has a real love for giving back. And maybe above all, she reminds me of my grandmother.
Oh, okay.
Who loves country and bluegrass music.
Okay.
And is really good on the guitar and singing herself.
Wow, okay.
So when I hear Dolly Parton sing, I actually hear my grandmother.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So I'd have to go with Dolly on that one.
Ashlyn was watching, my daughter was watching the other day, 9 to 5, the old movie there. And I think that the lead track on that 9 to 5, that's Dolly Parton's vocals over it.
Oh, yeah. It is. It absolutely is.
I listened, I said, boy, she really can sing. She really and that was a long time ago.
Yeah, she really can. And she writes most of her stuff, herself. Yeah,
and a powerful leader for women in country music, by the way.
Very much so, and an amazing businesswoman.
Yeah.
Her career had kind of really tapered off for some time, and she hooked up with a new manager who was really invested in her and her success, and she's really taken off just in the past few years. Again.
So that's, I really look up to her.
So we got chocolate, eggs, and coffee.
Yeah.
Dolly Parton
Yes.
singing and strumming on the guitar.
Right.
And we
The
are...
person.
Yeah, accompanied by...
And that's pretty easy. I mean, for me and my set of beliefs, it's Jesus.
Okay.
There'd be a lot to unpack there. So, hands down, Jesus Christ.
And he's leading you, he's teaching you, he's hanging out with you.
Yeah, all of the above, and he's explaining a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
How did these miracles work exactly?
I think most people, if they sat down with him, they'd want to have a long conversation.
Right, exactly.
For sure, about things. Okay.
Right.
I mean, it's an island. It's it's your island.
That's right.
Thank you so much for coming. This was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for thinking of me. For doing this. It's really
teary-eyed when you mentioned your grandmother.
Aw. It's flattering, and so you talk about females in the workforce and having success. It does take male allies.
Sure, of course.
Okay, so for a lawyer like yourself who's been so successful to think of me as someone who has the qualifications, and has something to say, that also helps to squash that imposter phenomenon. So thank you for thinking
you're
of
very
me.
welcome. What I'm hoping is that the accounting firms are now going to start recruiting at the skydiving events. So.
That's where we need to go.
It's still my favorite.
Accounting enrollment is down. Let's just go over to the skydiving convention.
Yeah, exactly. What are these conferences? We don't need these stuffy convention halls. We just need to go out there and find some people that want to jump from high up and risk their lives.
It's so true.
Great story.
It's so true.
This podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Listeners are advised to consult with an appropriate professional before acting on any of the topics or matters discussed on the podcast. This podcast may be considered attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee similar outcomes.